Hello, sir. Hello, everyone. I am Suryakant Brusty. Now, I am working on a project as an intern in healthcare technology. In this project, we are building a payment integration system for our e-commerce client with a payment service provider or Stripe payment service provider or Stripe PSP. Let me talk in brief that our client is an e-commerce client and they want their payment service to be handled by a payment service provider so that they can focus on building their e-commerce platform. Let me clear you first that we are not building the core payment service. We are just integrating with the payment service provider like many PSPs like Razorpay, PayPal, Trustly, Stripe, etc. And in this project, we are integrating with Stripe PSP. So you might wondering why we are not building a core payment service rather than building a payment service provider. That's why because to build a core payment service or system or for process card to store cards, there are something many licensing auditing also required. There is something called PCI DSS client. Mm, like you consider PCI DSS client here, the payment card industry data standards. Data store PCI compliance. So anybody who wants to store data or process card data, card details, so they have to be these PCI DSS compliant or many licensing and auditing. But the clients wants to build their e-commerce platform. They don't want to be in these licensing auditings and all things that. So we are now integrating with a payment service provider. There's some company, let's say Stripe, PayPal, or Razorpay. They do all the things. We just integrate with them, and it will charge some amount of money also, so that the e-commerce client can only focus on building their e-commerce platform only. So and now in this project we are integrating with Stripe payment service provider. Why Stripe payment service provider? It's because our client is situated in UK, and in that area Stripe is more popularized, you can say. For that, we're using Stripe payment service provider. And now we have to build a system taking in mind that the payment domain is highly responsible service. We cannot double process a payment two times. It will be a hazard for the system. You can say the money is debited twice and the product is get once. So it can't be tolerated. So you have to taking in mind that mm, all the payments should not be double processed and any types of failures should not affect the core payment system or state of the payment. Okay, let's not waste more time and allow me to take you to the functional implementation for building the payment integration system and how we are gonna build the payment system. Okay, so here you can say that our payment system. The simplified pay in or payout flow. How the payment flow works in the e-commerce platform, in any e-commerce platform. That this is the our end user, or you can say the customer, and customer wants to buy a product. They add to cart all the products and then choose to check out. Then he clicks the checkout button. After that, the money is debited from the customer end and goes back, or you can say goes to the e-commerce platform, goes to the e-commerce platform. And then the money is not directly sent to the seller account. Money will keep here in the e-commerce website or e-commerce platform account. After then, when the seller proceeds or delivers the product to the buyer, uh, the product is successfully delivered to the end user or customers, then only this money is gonna send back to the seller account. Seller account. Okay. For the payout related stuff, many systems are already built. But in this project, we are building only pay-in related stuff. For the pay-in feature, we are building our payment systems. So now let's talk about what is pay-in. So in this project, we are using provider as Stripe. Our payment type is APM or alternate payment method. There are many payment types like or through which you can payment. First one is card payment and second one is APM or alternate payment type. Okay, but here in this project we are using only alternate type payment method it is okay, and also for the card payment also we are using Stripe payment, and we are using the facilities of hosted payment page. There are many types of forms of you can the end user can pay check out. That is, first one is hosted payment page, another one is embedded. So what is hosted payment page? Here, when a customer wants to check out or buy a product, then for the completion of the payment process, the customer is redirected to a special or separate page other than the e-commerce platform. Customer is redirected to this page, and here he can fill all the details like card number or name, email, and menu also. After that, customer completes the payment and return back um, to the previous site or successful site or e-commerce site. Okay. So now what is embedded page? Embedded page is the page in which in the e-commerce platform also there is some portion, or you can say the payment page is here. Here is the e-commerce platform, let's say, and e-commerce platform, and here is the payment page. Here is the payment page. Okay, so now let's take you about that. How's the pay in a deposit salary checkout flow? That when the client or end user chooses the product and checkouts, then he will be connected to our payment systems, and our payment system sends APIs or connect with the APIs with Stripe or PayPal and many more PSPs, sending a request, and in response, Stripe sends us a response. Stripe sends us a response in the JSON format with a URL. Then the customer is redirected to the hosted payment page and proceed the order. Let me take you to the graphical function here. Here you can see there are client, server, Stripe API, and Stripe checkout. Okay, so what is the role of client? Client just selects the product and clicks the checkout button or starts the checkout. Then our server creates a checkout session. The client is connected to our server, and our server creates a checkout session and then sends checkout session as a API to the Stripe API here. So after then processing the checkout session, the Stripe API sends a URL back, sends a response back in a JSON format. I have already said. In this JSON format, there is a URL so that the client will be redirected to the using that URL and redirect to this payment page here, Stripe hosted payment page. And here filling all the details and clicking the payment, and for the successful completion of the payment, customer is redirected back to the success URL or the e-commerce platform saying that your payment is completed and order will be proceed. And in the backend also, our Stripe APIs sends all the notifications and webhooks to our payment server, to the server for the fulfillment. So what is fulfillment? Yeah. Fulfillment is the process of providing goods or services that your customer or end user completed the payment. Now you have to provide the products, deliver the products. Or if let's say customer is wants to access a course, you have to give them access and also. So this fulfillment handled automatically. It can be handled manually, but it's not recommended. Automatically handle the fulfillment is recommended. So let's take you to the a functional diagram elaborating more. Here is the end-to-end payment flow. How how the payment is gonna work. Here is the client browser, and here is the client browser, and here is the payment system, as well as here is the PSP. It can be of any PSP like Stripe PSP or PayPal PSP or Trustly or Razorpay and many more. But in this project, we are using Stripe. Okay, so come back to the client browser. When a client wants to check out after selecting the product, he wants to buy the product, then he clicks to the checkout page. After that, he wants to check out. The checkout page will be sent API to our payment systems, our payments services. Here, our payment services creates an checkout session and sends a API to the payment service provider. In our case, the Stripe payment service provider or Stripe PSP. And then the Stripe PSP returns a response with a payment token as well as a URL. The payment token as well as a URL. Okay. Then our payment service stores the token in the to the database. So it's our database connected to the payment service. Let's see. Yes. And then since using that URL, which is the PSP responded, to take the customer or redirect to the customer to the hosted payment page, and client fills all the details of the card details, his name, email ID, and then completes the payment. After that, it start payment as well completes the payment, and then after completion of the payment, the uh, client is redirected to the payment completion page where it is showing that your payment is completed, and then the PSP or Stripe PSP will send us the notifications or webhooks to complete our fulfillment of that product, and webhooks with the completion result also. Then we store the all the details that the payment is completed at our database. Okay, as I have already said, in this project we are using alternate payment method and are provided with Stripe, and we are only accepting one-time payments. I can say sell or checkout flow. You can say. Okay. Now let me take you to the technical discussion of the project. Every project needs to be built on an architecture. So in this project, we are using microservice architecture for building a product or project. Microservice architecture, if you want to follow, you have to follow the nine principles of microservices so that then our product will be built on top of microservices. So what are those nine principles? Nine principles. Let me talk one by one. The first principle is componentization. Simplify services. So what is componentization via service? It's the whole project, the whole product, and the microservices structured as independent components or services. That whole product or services is structured as independent components, and each is responsible for a specific business functions. Let's say uh, our payment services. Okay, let's say it is our whole payment services or payment system. You can say here is our client, and here is our payment service provider or Stripe payment service provider. Okay, so e-commerce. It is the payment system, and is our PSP or payment service provider. Okay, for this whole payment service or payment system, we have divided the whole payment project into sub components. Let's say for the request, all the request to be validate, there is a separate service for validation. For all the core payment services, there is a separate service for core payment services like core system. All the core processing payment processing. Okay. And here is another services for, let's say, Stripe integration system or services. Right. So when e-commerce or customers sends all the details for the when the customer clicks the checkout button, all the details will be fetched to our payment systems, required details. After the validation, then it goes to the core payment processing services, and then our core payment services talks to the Stripe integration services. Let in future might be many more PSP integration like clients in future say we want to integrate with PayPal, PayPal, so PSP. So for that, we will create another service for to integrate, and then this integration will be talked to the PSP services. In case you are using Stripe integration, so it is let's say it's Stripe PSP. Okay, so we are discussing the componentization of here componentization via services. What is the benefit of this componentization? It's that when um, in case our um, number of requests is increased, so we have to scale the systems. If we build all the system in one system, for that we have let's say now it is required only 4 GB RAM for all the processes. Um, and in future, our number of customers is increased. Now we want to scale this for all the system. If we keep in one the system, and if it is called monolithic, if you go with monolithic architecture for the scaling, it will be causes problems for that. If we built using a microservice architecture, let's say for the validation, we do not require many RAMs or many resources. Let's say 1 GB RAM only required or zero point 0.5 GB RAM, 0.5 GB RAM. Okay. Let's say for the core payment services, we need 2 GB RAM. Let's say for the integration, we need 1 GB RAM, like that. Here, all the resources or components are independent. Let's say if further scaling, we need to scale, the validation is not gonna use more or affect more. So uh, if we do not increase, it will be okay for us. But we have to increase. Let's say 2 GB RAM. We have to increase only this amount. The which component is need to be scale. We only have to increase that component, not the whole component as a whole. So let's say we now need a 5 GB RAM. We for the integration, we let's say we may not be needed for the scaling. So building with microservice architecture is always be handy. Let's say for the all this in monolithics, we have to build it this in. It will take mm, let's say 10 GB RAM also initially, or you can say let's say it is will increase 5 GB RAM. For the scaling, we have to scale all the uh, services, all the functionalities unnecessarily, which will costly also. For building a microservice architecture, using a microservice architecture, it's always comes handy. Okay, so now let's go to the second principle of. So what is second principle? It is the organized around business capabilities. Okay. uh, So what is organized around business? It is the that our all the business capabilities. There's all the components. Let's say we are using a payment system, right? So we need first to validate the systems, then the core processing the systems that, and for the integration service we are using integrations, so that all the components are around only on the business capabilities. What is the need of the business and that services? What is the purpose of that service? So that all the components work independently and purpose as a whole to the our aim. Okay, now let's say our third principle is decentralized governance. Okay, what is decentralized governance? It is control are distributed across the teams to make decisions independently within the boundaries of each. What is the in the let's say the tech team is working on this project. So each member are given access, or you can say the are can independently take decisions to make better what will be useful for that member without affecting other members. Let's say that the control are distributed across the teams to make decisions independently within their boundaries only, or boundaries of each. Okay, now let's say talk about the fourth principle is that decentralized data management. So what is decentralized data management? That each microservice has its own database or data store. For the validation of the validation service, it has its own database. Let's say validation database. For the core processing, let's say it have its own database. Let's say Stripe core database. For Stripe integration also, there is no need to use the database, so we just keep it. So making that decentralized data management, that all the services are not using one database rather than using their separate database for the data storing. So if the validation service wants to access the course payment process database, this database, he first talks to the core payment database, and then the core payment database give the access or required data to the validation service. Some same like that. If the core processing wants something from the validation database, he first talk to the validation service, and then he can access the data from the validation database. Okay, like that. Now let's talk about the another principles. It's the infrastructure automation. Infrastructure automation. So what is infrastructure automations? We are building using microservice architecture, right? So they are divided into small sum amount components for validation components, core payments components. So it will be like all the codes will be have a separate folder. Let's say it's the validation project. Let's say it is the core payment processing project. So for that, um, while deploying the into the production, it will be messy if we manually do all these projects and deploy to the production. So it has to be automatically, not manually. And that it has to, so that this is the principle that infrastructure automation. And our another principle is build products, not projects. We have to make the project, making in mind that we are building a product, not a project, right? So this product will last 3 4 year. So if we just make a product which will work for somehow, it's not gonna work. So we have to taking in mind that we are building a products, not a projects. And other principle is the smart endpoints and dump pipelines. So what is smart endpoint and dump pipelines? Here, while communicating one service with other services, there need to be the API communications. So these are the endpoints. It's the smart endpoints. If we, while communicating also, if we make the systems more heavy, it itself gonna as a service to handle all the communications. So it's not recommended. Only the smart endpoints like lightweight communication is needed so that the whole process is gonna done easily. Okay. Then the design failure. We have to build the product in that it will not be design failure. And other principle also evolutionary design. Also, okay. Yeah, this is all about the our project. And in this project, what I have been working on. In this project, I have been working on upon the payment status functionalities. Um, there are many functionalities that for the validations, for the processing of the payments, for the integrations and to the Stripe. But I have worked upon what is the payment status functionalities. So what is the payment status functions will do? It introduces status functions or introduces the status in the system, which inform what is happening with the payment at that time. Okay, it introduces what is happening. It introduces status that what is in the system. So that what is happening at that time. Right. It identifies all the checkpoints and give them a status names. Let's say for the validation, after the validations, okay, let's take this. Let's say after the validations, we also maintain a status that the payment is validated. that the payment is validated. And then after the validation, it goes to the core payment system and then Stripe. When the payment is validated, we stores the status name as a validated. Then when the our payment service sends a request to the Stripe Stripe, then we also changes or name a status as initiated. Um, let's take about that. First, what are the possibilities? First, validation. Okay, right? Validation service validates the payment. Okay, what is validation? Let's say if the request is valid, uh, save the save in database as created created status. The status is here created. Okay, like that. It indicates that the payment is validated successfully and stored in database. Right. And the second system is the create checkouts session API call. So after that, our core payment systems create a checkout session API call to the PSP or Stripe systems that create session API call that before you are about to call any provider service or let's say Stripe provider service or update the status to the initiated or you are about to call any provider service or payment provider service, update the status to the initiated, right? That we are about to call Stripe system. Okay, that a checkout creates checkout session API and calls to the PSP Stripe PSP. After that, the Stripe PSP returns back a request with URL, and then we keep the status as pending and store in the database. pending. So what is pending? When we get the success response from the Stripe URL, that after that, when the Stripe's response back with the JSONs in which a URL is there for the posted payment page redirections. So when we get success response from Stripe PSP, Stripe with URL, right? And then also there is, and then using that URL here, using that URL, our customer is redirected to a hosted payment page, and now our customer is in at redirected hosted payment page for the completion of the payments. For this, we maintain the status as pending. Okay. Now customer completes the payment, and it can be a failed systems or status. How it can be failed? That let's say it failed when the Stripe responds with failure. When Stripe responds with failure, then it is marked as informed as failed status. If, if a client or user wants to make payment once again, it will be a new fully fresh request. It is not gonna use that request or that session. It will be a new session or new request. And if the client completes the payment in their hosted payment page, it will be said that the status is success or PA in success and success. Okay. When the customer completes the payment at try payment hosted page. Okay, so that's all for this demo. Thank you very much.